The air in Alaska is colder than usual tonight, but it's not the weather that's chilling the world. Behind closed doors, in one of the most heavily guarded military bases on U.S. soil, two of the planet's most powerful men are face to face: Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, a meeting that could decide the fate of Ukraine, redraw international borders, and reshape global power. No cameras, no press, and no Ukraine in the room. What's really happening inside? And why was Alaska, of all places, chosen for a confrontation that could alter history? The meeting wasn't on any long-term diplomatic calendar. It wasn't months in the making. This showdown was triggered by a ticking clock, one that Trump himself set. In mid-July, the U.S. president publicly gave Russia a 50-day ultimatum: agree to a ceasefire in Ukraine or face consequences. Those consequences weren't vague threats. They hinted at punishing secondary sanctions targeting every country that continued to buy Russian oil and gas. By late July, Trump tightened the screws. He said Putin had just 10 of 12 days left to make a decision. That deadline came and went. No ceasefire, no change on the battlefield. But behind the silence, phone lines were heating up. And instead of backing down, Putin agreed to meet Trump face to face. The Kremlin's initial response was telling. Official spokespeople called Trump's threats very serious, yet insisted Moscow needed time to analyze. That time quickly became a bridge to negotiations, setting the stage for a confrontation on U.S. territory. But here's the twist. According to some insiders, Putin isn't flying to Alaska because he's afraid of sanctions. He's going because he sees an opportunity to shift Trump away from supporting Ukraine. This meeting might not just be about ending the war, it could be about changing the U.S. stance entirely. Beyond the politics, there's another reason the urgency is so high: the staggering human toll. Ukraine has endured more than 3 years of devastation. Entire towns wiped from the map, thousands of children abducted, tens of thousands of civilians dead. Since February 2022, over 13,800 Ukrainian civilians have been killed and more than 35,000 injured. And the military toll is even more grim. By early June, Ukraine had suffered nearly 400,000 casualties, with up to 100,000 dead. Russia's own losses are staggering: over 1 million casualties since the invasion began, according to Ukraine's Ministry of Finance. These aren't just numbers, they're an entire generation of soldiers and civilians caught in a relentless grinder of artillery, drones, and missiles. For millions, the outcome of this Alaska meeting isn't abstract diplomacy, it's the difference between returning home or losing it forever. And yet, despite this being a meeting about Ukraine's survival, Ukraine's president has not been invited. Holding such a critical meeting in Alaska isn't just a geographic convenience. It's a move loaded with symbolism and strategy. The likely venue: Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson in Anchorage, one of the few places capable of securing a summit between two nuclear-armed leaders. It's not only within sight of Russian territory across the Bering Strait, but it's also home to some of America's most advanced warplanes: F-22 Raptors, C-17 Globemasters, E-3 Sentry aircraft, and combat-ready helicopters. For the U.S., the choice of location could serve as a subtle form of intimidation, a not-so-quiet reminder of what American air power looks like. For Russia, there's historical resonance. Alaska was once part of the Russian Empire, sold to the U.S. in 1867. Certain figures in Moscow even refer to it as an American of Russian origin. Meeting there allows Putin to frame the location as symbolically connected to Russia's past, a psychological card to play. But the setting might also carry an unspoken message: we're meeting in the shadow of U.S. firepower. Remember what that means. The official description from the White House calls this summit a listening exercise, but the stakes suggest it's far more than that. Trump wants to test the waters, to see in minutes whether Putin is open to ending the war, or if he's still determined to claim all of Ukraine. Putin, on the other hand, will come armed with demands. His primary goal: formal recognition of Russia's control over the 20% of Ukraine it currently occupies, including Donetsk, Luhansk, and Crimea. He also wants Ukraine's NATO ambitions dead in the water, ensuring Kyiv remains too weak to challenge Moscow in the future. And then there's the most controversial possibility: land swaps. Trump has hinted at the idea of Ukraine regaining some territory while conceding other areas to Russia. But here's the problem: Ukraine's constitution forbids giving up land. Even if President Zelensky wanted to, he legally couldn't. And politically, Ukrainians won't accept handing over regions soaked in the blood of those who fought for them. Still, the fact that land swaps are even part of the conversation raises one dangerous question: is this meeting about peace or about rewarding aggression? Behind the battles for cities and borders lies another motive: resources. The Donbas region, where much of the fighting is concentrated, holds 40% of Ukraine's metal and mineral wealth, valued at over $350 billion. Control over these deposits would give Russia enormous economic leverage for decades. There are even rumors, unconfirmed but explosive, that the U.S. might offer Russia access to certain Alaskan mineral or rare earth resources as part of a larger trade-off. Combined with potential sanction relief, this could be a package designed to tempt Putin into compromise. If true, the optics are staggering. Russia could walk away from Alaska not only with promises over Ukraine's territory, but also with new energy or mineral concessions from the U.S. Of course, history casts a long shadow over any proposed deal. Putin has broken or undermined over 20 ceasefire agreements with Ukraine since 2014. The Minsk agreements, meant to restore Ukraine's control over its own borders, were shattered by continued Russian military operations. Even if Trump and Putin agree to something in Alaska, there's no guarantee it will hold. Any land or resource concessions could simply give Russia a stronger position to launch future offensives. And while most experts think the odds are near zero, there's one scenario that would shock the world: Putin leaving Alaska not as a negotiator, but as a prisoner. Since 2023, the International Criminal Court has had an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin over alleged war crimes, including the deportation of Ukrainian children. Normally, this isn't a concern for him. He avoids countries that might enforce it. The United States isn't a member of the ICC and isn't obligated to arrest him. Still, the theoretical possibility lingers. It's a tiny chance, but the symbolism is enormous. The idea that the man directing one of the deadliest wars of the century could be detained on foreign soil. For Kyiv, the Alaska meeting is both a source of hope and deep anxiety. President Zelensky has laid out 5 core principles he wants respected. A genuine ceasefire. Any Ukraine-related decisions must involve Ukraine directly. All talks to end the war must include Ukraine at the table. Ironclad security guarantees. No Russian veto over NATO membership. But without a seat in Anchorage, Ukraine has no control over what's discussed. Whatever agreements are reached, or even floated, will be heard secondhand after Trump and Putin decide what to share. The stakes couldn't be higher. On one side, the possibility, however slim, of ending a war that's already claimed over 1 million lives. On the other, the risk of legitimizing territorial conquest, rewarding aggression, and setting a dangerous precedent for the 21st century. Trump and Putin's Alaska meeting isn't just another diplomatic encounter. It's a collision of egos, ambitions, and global consequences. The outcome could stabilize Eastern Europe or push it closer to another, even deadlier chapter. As the doors remain closed at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson, the world waits, wondering whether history is about to record a moment of peace or the opening move in an even greater conflict.